Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here in front of you to present information that will hopefully give you some benefit in your search for accounting software if you're in that process right now. And just to give you a little bit more information about me, so like Lauren said, I'm a senior director on our accounting services implementation and support teams, one of our teams. And I am a CPA, and I did start out with the CPA division at Sikich, doing audits and taxes. But since my transition over to the technology division, I've been supporting and implementing 4 accounting software solutions. So a lot of the information here today comes out of, understanding some of the similarities and differences between different accounting software platforms. And then another thing that Lauren mentioned too is that we also work with clients with business process alignment engagements, and this is happening before clients purchase any software. So we discuss with the clients, understand the business processes that they go through, things that they want to improve and change with new software, understand the requirements, reporting requirements, all of that. We document it in a solution document, and then we help design the configuration for the solution and make sure everything aligns to that configuration to best fit those requirements, so everything's going to work as best as it can in the new system. So we do all that before the accounting software is purchased. So that's one of the things that is kind of the driver behind some of this information that you're going to hear about today. All right, so our agenda. We're going to talk about where we are and why we're here. We're going to go through specific areas of your search for fund accounting, nonprofit fund accounting software, and point out some things that you may want to consider asking of the vendors that you're looking at, and then talk about what else. So we'll go through these items. As I mentioned, we are going to talk about first where we are and why we're here. So we just found out where some of you are in this process, but really it's interesting that we have a really great turnout for this webinar today, and there are a lot of people that are in this same boat. Let me turn on my little laser pointer here. So in this same boat, there are a lot of us in this same boat right now, and so it's interesting to think about why all of a sudden we've got this surge or this accelerated migration to the cloud. And in my mind, I see like 4 different pieces that have kind of come together all at once to help accelerate this. And the first one is technology is changing. So the environment and the operating systems are changing, and older software may not run on some of the newer technology. So a lot of times our clients are faced with the decision to upgrade their current software, and sometimes that is costly. And in weighing that cost, maybe it's more effective and more efficient and even a better move because you're going to get new functionality and new business processes within the system if you switch software at this time. Plus, you might want to go to the cloud. So, that's one thing that's changing. And the next thing is the work environments are changing. So the pandemic made it so that remote work is much more common now. As long as there's internet somewhere, you can work just about from anywhere. So that makes the cloud a more enticing avenue to go because of the flexibility and everything that comes with that. So that's another thing that's changing right now and has changed in the past few years. The accounting software is changing. So you may be on an accounting software that's not in the cloud and may never go to the cloud. So that may be a reason to look at other options out there so that you can take advantage of some of the newer technology. You may be on an accounting software that has both an on-premise version and a cloud version. You'll probably find that with most of those vendors, they're building more into their cloud application. So they're spending more development time and money on the cloud options. And so, to get the newer features, it's in the cloud version. So that's another thing that's changing. And then finally, the functionality is changing. There's when you first purchased the software that you're currently on, there was a set of requirements that you wanted to have and maybe some additional functionality that you didn't need at the time. Now we're seeing more of that functionality that wasn't even an option, not even something we considered back then. And it's in some of the newer software. It's in some of the newer cloud software. And so that may be a reason to change too, in that your existing software may not have some of that functionality, and a new cloud option may have it. So there are a lot of things coming into play here, and reasons why there are many of you on this call today looking for some guidance to help in this process. Because as you know, if you've started that search, if you've gone online, or if you've started working with a business partner, there are a lot of options out there. And you want to make sure you find the best one to suit your needs for now and for a long time coming.
Yes, and as Selena mentioned, on the audit side, we, in talking with a lot of organizations throughout the process, we do see a bigger need for organizations to have softwares that can store source documentation within different functions of the system. Again, allow those employees to work from a variety of different locations, and also have some of the built-in security around, again, being able to log in from different areas that are not necessarily the designated, brick and mortar, work location that used to be. So a lot of things going on, a lot of things that have changed in the last probably 3-4 years now, that are kind of driving some of these things. And then again, as Selena mentioned too, just software vendors no longer supporting certain versions of softwares that are on-premise type versions, and really pushing for those online and those cloud options.
Right. And so then to take this a step further and let you know what we hope you'll be able to gain from this webinar. Many of you have probably been using your current accounting software for many years, maybe even decades. So you haven't been through this process of researching new software and going through an implementation, and it's a big undertaking. Even if you have more recently, it's a big undertaking. So it's not something that you probably want to do now and then know you're going to do again in a few years. You probably want to make the most well-informed decision that you can, so that it's going to suit your needs now and it's going to grow with you in the future, so you can hopefully anticipate some of the things that you might need to do, or understand that the vendor behind the software is anticipating those needs and advancing the software ahead as well. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of options out there, and so we want to help you kind of work on gathering your information and information that you need to focus on, so that you can make that decision and just understand the components that are critical to you. So I've got this little the glasses there, kind of reminding me of the eclipse recently. If you were in the line of the totality there with the eclipse, and you had the glasses on, went outside and looked at it, the glasses kind of helped you focus on exactly what you needed to see, and kind of filtered out some of the things that were just in the way and would prevent you from being focused on that. So that's what we want to help you do with some of our knowledge that we've gained over all the years that we've been here at Sikich. And we also want to, give you different perspectives, things that maybe you haven't thought of that we've gone through with our other clients, and let you, gain from those and benefit from those ideas as well. And then just remind you of your resources out there. So if you're working with a CPA firm or a technology firm, you've got people like myself, you've got people like Lauren, tap into their knowledge. You've got your peers. You go to different conferences and you meet other people who are providing similar types of services and needing to report to funding sources in a similar way. And so you can get to know them, get to know what works for their systems, what hasn't worked, and and you get feedback from them as well. So you've got a lot of resources out there, and be sure and understand them all and use them all to the best that you can. All right, so how we're going to approach this information is we're going to provide questions. So we're not going to provide answers. We're going to provide questions. So these are questions that we think you might want to consider in these specific areas to ask the vendors. If you're looking at multiple software packages, or even if you're focused in on one, you can make sure that it does all of these things that you may need to do. We're going to start out with fund accounting and grant management. And if you're on this webinar right now and you don't currently do anything with fund accounting and grant management, you still may pick up on some things because you might possibly have multiple entities, multiple legal entities, and there are ways that you can use fund accounting concepts and use different software to incorporate all those entities into one database possibly. So you'll see some things with do tos and do froms that maybe I've got in here for fund accounting, but maybe they could relate to you in a different way. So we'll go through and we'll look at these first. All right, and the first couple here, I do have some examples of what I'm trying to get across here. And this is a good idea for you to communicate with your vendors that you're evaluating to make sure that the understanding is there in terms of what you need, and that the answers they're giving you are related to those questions. Everybody's on the same page. So the first question, and a real key differentiator between some accounting softwares, is how does the solution handle funds and grants? And I've got two examples here where I've got an invoice entered and I have the journal entry that it creates for each type. So in the first one, in the first example, I would have entered the first two lines, which are going to a supplies expense account. And let me get my pointer back on here. There we go. These first two lines here are going to two different funds, Fund 01 and Fund 04. And that's all I would enter in the system. Then most accounting software packages are going to put in the payables for you. So is the system set up so that the payable account will be broken out by those funds? So that's one way of doing it. You may or may not do it that way. But if you want to do it that way, you can give this type of example and make sure that it's something that can be automatic. So if I put in two funds here for my different expenses, I could have it going to payables in those two different funds. Automatically, it knows what dollar amount to put for each one. So that's just one example. Another example is using due to and due from accounts. And this might be something if you would use if you have maybe a centralized fund to pay for your payables. And so the payables in this case are paid out of Fund 01. So I still have expenses split between 01 and 04. And 01 pays for that payable, pays it with cash eventually. However, the due to and due from are set up automatically. Again, the system is configured to do this. And so you don't have to put in these last three lines. You just put in the first two and it'll figure the last three. So it'll set up the due to and due from appropriately for the $100 that 04 owes to 01 in order to reimburse for that payment. So these are just two examples of how systems can do fund accounting or grant accounting. Some systems can do both. So you can have it either way. Some systems will only do the due tos and due froms. And if you want to split out, let's say payables, you want to split out cash, you want to split out all of your balance sheet accounts by these funds, you would have to do it in a more manual way if the system doesn't do this top section, this top option. So this is something here that, to me, I do see differences in the different types of accounting software that I've supported. And it's easier to see on a screen here, and this may be something, if it's a requirement for you, to provide examples like this to your vendor and just make sure you're clear on what the system can do.
Great point, Selena. Sometimes I see examples here where really kind of the big difference between the first example and the second one here is being able to really provide a kind of a full balance sheet and income statement by fund, which that first example kind of allows you to do. So if you have a need to kind of see a full balanced grant program or activity, full balance sheet with, available cash, payables versus, again, kind of a commingling your balance sheet accounts together in the second example. So certainly either one can fit the needs, but depending on maybe some external reporting that you have to do, the first option can also be an important one to consider.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And then to take this a step further with the cash side of things, I've got two examples here for solutions that can allow a centralized bank account where the funds can actually have a portion of that total bank account balance. And I've got a screenshot here where the cash account is this 11001, and then it shows the breakdown between the three different funds in this case to show how much of that total $5 million is broken out into each fund. So you can still have that fund tracking on your balance sheet by the different cash accounts and AP accounts and all of that, even by using one bank account. And then the bottom option here is just to make sure that a separate bank account can be used for each fund and that it can be configured automatically. So whenever I use, let's say I do a payable invoice for 01 and I go to pay that it knows to use 11,001. Or when I do a payable invoice for 04, that it automatically knows to pay it out of 11,002, or 11,002. So just again, two different options here, two different things that some systems do both, some systems only do one, and sometimes it's a little bit more manual in terms of determining what cash account to use. So I've got these examples here that you can use to understand that a little bit better and relay that in your questioning. All right, and then the next one here is regarding due to and due from accounts. So sometimes we'll see that clients will have set up and maybe the accounting system will only allow due to and from other funds. So everything is kind of aggregated together. You'll see on the right-hand side here, I'll talk about this first and then we'll go backwards here, but on the right-hand side, I have it separated as some accounting systems do, where we can say, okay, in Fund 01, I am due a receivable from 04 for 15,000, and I'm due a receivable from Fund 05 for 27,000. Now, if we go back to this one that just says due from other funds and it doesn't segregate out 04 and 05, we just see the total 42,000. So is it important for you to see the breakdown here so that you can kind of match those up and just make sure that everything ties out? Maybe so. Maybe this left one is sufficient. It just depends on your requirements. But this could be helpful in making sure that all your due tos and due froms are in balance. Over the years, I have had to help out with that, and it gets a little tricky if it's all just kind of mixed in like this. Sometimes it's hard to tell which piece is off. So the more it can be separated, the easier it is to find some of those differences. But we'll talk about keeping those in balance in a future slide here. All right, and then a few more things with fund accounting and grant management. What controls are in place to ensure that those due tos and due froms are always in balance? So what we just talked about on the previous slide, can you post a journal entry directly to a due to or due from account? And if you can, does it have to have an offsetting side of one of those due to, due from accounts to balance it out? How does the system manage that? And make sure that you don't accidentally make a mistake and get out of balance with those due tos and due froms. How does the solution handle grants that run on a different program year than your organization's fiscal year. So maybe your organization is on a June 30th year end, fiscal year, and you've got a federal program that runs through 9/30. How does the system allow for 9 months in one fiscal year and 3 months in another fiscal year, and be able to combine the revenue and expenses for those 2 different fiscal years into that program year? So you want to check and understand that. And then also, how do you run reports for programs that have a 2-year span, that are longer than a year? So a couple of questions there. What's the process for adding a new fund or grant? Is it as simple as adding a new code for a new fund? So let's say I've got Fund 10 that I want to set up now. Do I just put in Fund 10 and then I can use it to code transactions? Or do I have to set up all of the combinations with my departments and my programs and other categories that I might have? So do I need to set up all of those combinations? And are there other configuration settings that I need to do with that new fund as well? So for example, closing assignments. Do I need to tell that fund to use a certain GL account for the revenue and expense accounts to close into the right net assets or fund balance account at the end of the year? Are there certain steps that I need to take? And if there are, is there a wizard? You'll see a lot of programs with a wizard, or wizards throughout the system actually, to help automate some of those and make it a lot smoother, a lot easier, and a lot more foolproof in making mistakes and setting things up and not getting everything that needs to be set up. So that's maybe it seems like a small question, but it actually opens up and has a lot of answers that could come out of it. And then, does the solution handle non-financial grants or aspects of grant management? So the award process, the application and award process, and tracking that, understanding what compliance reporting needs to be done, and can any of that be tracked in the system so that you can do compliance reporting out of the system? So the things that are not really related to the financial reporting, but anything else around grant management, how does the system handle that? Is there a solution for it? All right, and we'll go on to our second section here, which is right up there with fund accounting and how it handles that, in my opinion, for a key thing to look at with a new system, and that's the financial and operational reporting aspect. So what are some of the reporting questions that you should ask? One, is the reporting solution native to the accounting software, or is it an external third-party reporting tool? We see applications with both. We have accounting software that we support where the reporting tool is very good in the system itself. It's its own proprietary tool, and users can use it to get the majority of the reports that they need right out of the system. They don't have to do a lot of exporting or use an external reporting tool. Other packages really rely on third-party tools that can connect to that database and do, reporting. Sometimes it's a little bit more robust. It's got more capabilities. So it depends on what you need to do with your reporting and where it comes from as to whether you need that third-party tool. The next thing that I've got here is, how easy is it for all of your users of the system to design and run their own reports? Can they do that without going to IT to have some custom SSRS report created, or Crystal report, or any of those other tools that you might have used in the past, where they're more technical and there's a lot of connecting the tables behind the scenes and validating the data that you're putting together and getting all that right before the users can design the report from the aspect of columns and rows and things like that. So how easy is it for all of the users to do their own reports so that they don't have to rely on IT staff to do the technical work? And that's a key feature too, because sometimes the really robust tools are very challenging to use because they are so complicated, and they are, they have so much that you can do that it just takes, a lot of skill to set those up. So you want to check that and really understand. Does a reporting solution handle all of the reports needed for all the users of the report? So think about what you use internally, but also think about what you give to the board, what you have to report to your funders, and your donors. Anybody else where you provide data, your grantees, your sub-grantees, whatever it might be, whoever you provide that data to, can you get those reports out of there? One of the best things that we do in obtaining information and understanding that is to get sample reports from our clients. And so that way we can actually see what data is there, how it's presented, any calculations, any special unique things that are done in those reports, and we really understand it. So consider all the reports that you prepare now, and then consider everything that you haven't been able to do before. So maybe you've got some Excel file where you patch in pieces from other reports and you make, a consolidated report somehow. Can that be done in a new system? Can everything be configured with a reporting tool to do that and save you a ton of time each month or however often you do that report? So think about those and provide those reports to the vendors. Provide samples. Take the ones that are most challenging, the ones that are most complicated, and not your standard balance sheet type of income statement type of reports, but take the ones that are more unique and take more time to do, and show that to them, and just make sure that they're comfortable with that. And you can even have them kind of demonstrate how that can be done. You may give them information and they may say, oh yeah, we can do this. There may be a piece that they don't quite understand. And so having them do a little demonstration can help with that and just clarify that there is a true understanding on the vendor side, and that it can in fact meet the need that you're requesting with the report. All right, some more reporting. How does a report solution handle filtering, grouping, subtotaling, all the things that you might want to do with your account segments and your GL accounts, and different ways that different people in your organization may want to slice and dice that data? Can they enter their own parameters? Can they put dates in? Can they put account values in or ranges? How can that be done, and how easy is it? And can the reporting solution handle the non-financial and statistical data? So let's say that you want to put in there in your accounting system and have it report on the number of meals served, the number of clients that you've served for a certain type of service. So, if you want to have that count information or non-financial information, does the system have accounts that you could put that in? And then can those be used in the report? And then what calculations can you do in the report? Can you set up your own custom columns and do your own math in them? So let's say you want to do the percentage remaining of budget that you have for the year, and maybe that's not a standard column. Can you go in and put that calculation in and have it report that? So what kind of flexibility do you have there? And then does the solution come with default reports to use as a starting point, so you don't have to start from scratch every time you want to do something and create a new report? So can it give you templates? Can it give you base reports? Now you may need to change them because your chart of accounts may be different. You may have different dimensions or segments, and you need to tweak that and customize it for your own. But it may be a starting point with some columns in there for current year to date, prior year to date, budget variance, whatever it might be. So check and see what default reports are available. And then we continue with reporting. If it is an external report or a reporting tool that is suggested, see what all is actually in the accounting system. So see what you can do without going to the external source, because you may not want to do that for every little thing that you look up or report on in the system. So just see what is actually in the system. You're going to have some level of reporting within the system. And I can tell you that with the ones I've worked with and others that I know about, I mean, there's a wide variety of how far the internal reports go, or the default standard reports in the system go, and then how much you would need to rely on an external reporting tool, and what that balance is between the two options there. And then find out if those reports within the system are configurable. So can you go in and move things around, add columns, remove columns, whatever you might not need to see, and make it a little bit more meaningful to you. So can you do some of that configuration? And then, I talk about taking, when we're working with our clients, I talk about taking everything that you do in Excel and let's try and get it all into the system so that it's just pressing a button, letting the system generate the report for you, and you're not changing things in Excel. You're not accidentally hitting a key in Excel, changing all of the formulas, creating NAs or errors all over the place because there's a weird code in there in a cell now, or making something that doesn't balance all of a sudden. So, I like to have everything kind of analyzed to see if we can bring it into the system. But there may be times when you do want to take information and export it out to Excel so that you can put filters at the top and do sorting or filtering or subtotaling or something else and analyze that data in a little bit different way. So when you export that, do you export it directly to Excel, or does it have to go through a comma delimited file? So that's this last one here. And then when it does get exported, can you take out all those page breaks automatically? So if you're exporting 300 pages of data and you want to just get it in all one list, do you have to go through and remove those, sort it and remove them? However you go about doing that, do you have to do that, or is it just an option when you export, say, hey, remove all those extra things, I just want the data? So check into that. And then some technical questions with reporting. Is the reporting solution cloud-based, or are there components that are on-premise? We do have a solution that we work with for reporting that is cloud-based for the most part, but there is a part of it, there's one component that is optional that you do need a SQL server for, and you do install it on that SQL server. So that could be in the cloud, it could be in Azure, but it is something that you have to maintain. It's a server you have to maintain somewhere. So even though it's a cloud-based solution, there's that piece of it that you do have to have a server for. So check into questions like that and just make sure you understand the technology behind it and if it all is all cloud-based or not. If the reporting solution is external, how does it connect to the accounting system? Sometimes there are connectors that are built specifically for accounting software packages. So we work with one that has connectors for Great Plains, for GP, for Business Central, and several other accounting packages that are commonly used. So there's a connector that you buy, and it automatically links everything up. It knows what tables all the different data is in, and you don't have to map that. There are others where you have to tell the system, okay, this table has the account payable invoices. This table has the journal entries, and you have to kind of tell the system what it's seeing in your database. So that's an important piece there. How does it connect? And then another option that we see with some reporting solutions is that they can connect to other sources. They can connect to other databases, a data warehouse, other systems, and even Excel spreadsheets. So if you've got, let's just say you've got your budget in an Excel spreadsheet and it's not in your accounting system, and you report into this reporting tool your actuals, can it also go out and look at your budget spreadsheet and bring those in and do your comparisons? So there are lots of options like that that are available. And then What security settings are available for the reports? Meaning, can you set up a report for a user to only see the funds that apply to their department, or GL accounts that they can see, or other segments or dimensions, programs, departments, categories, whatever it might be? Can you set the security to that level? Sometimes the reporting is kind of a loophole for security. There may be security within the accounting system that will limit a fund or an account or other segment so that users can only see the ones that they work with and not anything outside their department or program. But then when it gets to reports, that same security may not be there, especially if it's an external reporting tool. So you want to check that and just make sure that that security can carry over if that's important to you, to have your users only see information that they should see with their programs. And then how are the reports distributed to users who are not users of the accounting software? So if you want to send out reports to program managers who don't use the software, how do you do that? Is it a PDF file that goes into some location? Does it go through email? Can they go into a portal and grab their own reports and run them with their own parameters, let's say date ranges, and see real-time information? So find out about that, how non-accounting software users can see the information in that reporting tool. All right, so that was several slides of reporting questions, but as I mentioned, reporting is a key factor, and it may be the main factor in your accounting software decision, because in the end, that's what you're doing all of your accounting data entry and tracking for, is that end result of the reports, so that you can manage your organization, you can report to your funders and demonstrate how you're using that funding so that you can get additional funding. And you've got all of those reasons for that reporting to come out of there in the way that you need it. And so that, to me, is often the most critical factor in the determination here. So that's why I've got a lot of questions on it. And I hope that that helps in your consideration of things that you may want to ask your vendors. I will mention down here, when you do get to the implementation phase, be sure to take your reporting needs into account at the design. When you're setting up the system, when you're setting up your chart of accounts, you may change how your accounts are structured and all of that to make sure that everything will go in there the way that is going to be best suited to get it out of the system. So be sure that that's used at the very early stages of your implementation. All right, the next one here is process automation. This is something that's not unique to nonprofit organizations, but it is something that has really taken off recently, I think mainly due to the pandemic and people wanting to work outside of the office, or needing to work, a few years back, needing to work outside the office and not being able to go in to print checks, or having to take them home and they're not secure and all of that. So people look to the AP invoice processing and the bill pay processing. And so there are a lot of solutions out there right now to help with AP automation. So I've got some questions in here to help you maybe narrow down the options into some that you want to consider and things that you may want them to do. So with this, it's process automation and workflow, but I have specific questions for AP invoicing and bill pay. But these can apply to other types of processes. AP and bill pay are the most common ones that we're seeing right now. So what options are available for the approval workflow? So how can you structure that? Can you have thresholds for multiple approvals? So if I've got a request for something that's under $5,000, maybe I need one approval. And if it's over $5,000, I need two people to approve it. Can I have my approvals routed based on who I am and what department I'm in? So if I'm in department 1 and I need to have my department head manage that and review it and approve it, if a different user in department 2 may go to a different approver. So can you manage and route based on that? Can you have alternates when people are out, so it doesn't sit on someone's desk for a week while they're on vacation? Can you have groups of approvers? So maybe Lauren and I approve invoices or requests or anything that go through this automation, and only one of us has to do it. So if Lauren gets to it first, great, it's approved. If I get to it first, great, it's approved, but we don't both have to do it. So can we set it up that way? Can you have multiple levels of approvers? So even without a threshold of a dollar amount, it has to go through maybe the department head and then maybe the fiscal officer. So does it need to go through different levels of approvers? And then the final one on here that I've got listed is, let's say it sits on my desk for a while and I am on my desk. I say, it sits in my queue in my computer, and I notice it, but I'm traveling. I'm going to a client site for the week to do one of these business process alignments. And so I am not really keeping up with what's coming into that queue, and it sits there for a few days. How long can it sit there before it automatically goes to a different person? Maybe it sends it to Lauren if I sit on it for 5 days and I don't do anything with it, so that it doesn't get stuck. So those are some questions there about the approval. How do the vendor invoices get into the system? Do the vendors send it to a certain email address at the vendor for the automation vendor? And does it automatically get in that way? Do you have to scan it? Does it come in an email to you and you have to take that attachment and put it in a certain location? Just the logistics of how that happens. How does the solution read the invoice data? And this is really prime time changing technology right here with AI. So does the system use AI to go in and figure out where the date is, where the vendor is, where the dollar amount is, where the tax field is, whatever it might be? How does it read that? And we see a lot of systems are starting to use AI right now. So that is a key thing, and it's changing as we speak. How does the solution determine the account coding and the segment coding? So any defaults from your vendors in the accounting system, does it know to go in and look at that? Can additional documents be attached with the invoice? And these are questions that are actually have come to me when I've been helping clients evaluate different AP automation software. These are questions that they're asking. So these are real-time actual questions that are coming in that are important to some of the clients that I work with. So can we attach additional documents to the invoice supporting information afterwards? And can we attach that after the invoice has been processed? Can I go back and put a PDF of the check on that invoice so I've got it all right there at my fingertips? Some technical questions with this. Is the automation part of the accounting solution, or is it an add-on? Is it an external solution? Some accounting software packages have a certain extent of some of this OCR or AI reading, and then the workflow built into it. And then sometimes maybe more comprehensive workflow is needed, and a third party may be used as an add-on. If it is an add-on, how does it integrate and what data comes over? Where do the vendors get entered? Do they get entered in the third party and then pushed into your accounting system, or do they get entered in your accounting system and pushed back to the third party? There's just lots of ways that things can work, and you just want to understand up front how that will work. How do the attachments get imported into the accounting software, or do they? So sometimes these third-party AP automation solutions keep all the attachments there, and you just reference them from your accounting solution. So the attachments never get into the accounting solution itself. More technical questions here. Does the approval workflow happen in the add-on solution or the accounting software? Can the data attached be extracted at a later date? Let's say you find a different solution that you want to change to that does some functionality that you'd like to use. Can you take that data and attachment information, bring it into another software? What format does it come out of? Same thing with bill pay and your vendor bank information. Are you able to extract that? I know of one in particular, and maybe others, where it's a third party and all of that vendor bank information is pretty much owned by that third party, and you can never see it, you can never pull it out. So if you were to change, you would just have to go gather that information from those vendors again. So something to know up front. And then we'll go on to budgeting and allocations, just one slide each here. On budgets, are they maintained in the accounting software, or are they maintained in a separate budget and reporting tool? Sometimes they're in a separate budget and reporting tool, which is fine for reporting. However, if you want to do any budget validation in your accounting software, if that budget isn't in the accounting software, is there a way for the accounting software to say, hey, when you've got a requisition or purchase order, can it validate against the budget and see if you have enough budget for that? If it's not in the software, does it know to go to this external source and see it? Maybe it does, maybe it can't transfer that information. So that may be a sticking point there if it's not in the accounting software. And then what functionality exists for the budgeting process? This is a key area too that we're seeing a lot of our clients have a renewed interest in. So can the department contributors or program contributors access the budgeting process or the budgeting software and have input into their part of the budget? Can you have steps and due dates along the way to keep people accountable for their process, their part of that process? Can it roll up all those department budgets into one organizational budget? And does it have the review and approval workflow in the solution? And then a key thing here that we're seeing some of our clients have been requested to provide is not only their budget by grants and funds, but also the total agency. And how does that work? Because you may have grants that only go 6 months into your fiscal year, and then you don't have another grant for that next 6 months. How can you do you extrapolate that and predict what that grant might be? How do you figure that into a total agency budget on an agency fiscal year? And then how are budgets modified? So after they are set, how do you go in and modify them? And then what reports are available? All right, and allocations here. What methods can be used? And I'll say with this real quick that allocations, some systems that I've worked with do this really, really well. And it's actually understandable to set them up as a user and understand how to get it to do what you want. And there are other systems that don't do it at all, and you really do it outside in Excel, and then you just import it in. So this is a big differentiator between some accounting software packages that I've used and seen. So what methods are available? Can you put in tables of counts? Can it use transaction counts and pull those from the system? So how many checks did I write for each program? Base it on that. Base it on headcount or FTEs. Unit or statistical accounts, can those be entered in the system and used? And then that allocation, can it be done at the time I do an AP invoice, like we saw on one of those first screens? Or can I pool all the costs, and then at the end of the month or end of the quarter, however often, can it go in and say, all right, I've got these costs, I need to split them based on whatever base it is, and have the system split it. And then finally, can it handle the indirect cost rate if you have to do that method? And then I'm going to hop into a few bonus questions here. So outside of the 4 topics that we had earlier, really 5 topics, but security and licensing, it's got some questions here. Can security be set to restrict users to certain accounts or funds? We talked about that earlier in reporting, but can the software do it too? Are there different types of users? So if I'm just going in and helping with a budget, if I'm just running reports for my program, if I am just approving purchase orders or invoices, do I need a full license, or can I get by with a less expensive option? And then the licensing for the add-ons. So if you have a separate reporting tool, budget tool, AP automation tool, how do the licenses compare? Do you have to have the same number of licenses you have in your accounting software, or can you have a different number and maybe more for your AP automation because you've got more people there. And then the big one down here is, how is a software vendor using and planning to use AI? We're seeing this in several software packages that we use and that we have internally. And so that's a big factor, and that's going to be changing kind of the landscape of what the software does here real soon. All right, so that, I know we don't have a whole lot of time here for questions, so I will certainly follow up with any questions that we have afterwards and get back to everyone on the questions that come in between Lauren and myself.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Selena, for all the information today. And certainly, please, anyone in attendance, reach out. Any questions? If you think of something after today as well, please reach out. We'd be happy to talk with you and get your question answered.